hadn't heard anybody. Terry was talking about it. Jared just came in talking about it.
That is, I should have thought, who's the person who couldn't hear it when they got out of their car?
Well, I asked him specifically, and he said it wasn't.
All right. Well, guys, we are continuing to look as we are in Advent. One of the things that we want to think about is the consistency of God in who He is, in His character. And that whatever we celebrate in Jesus' incarnation, in the Advent, should be consistent with our understanding of the cross. And so I felt like this is actually a really good time to talk about what we understand the cross to be and what it to be about. Because we have kind of an overarching idea that should help us to hold on to a correct understanding and help us to maybe glean out those understandings that aren't really correct and aren't really helpful. Because when we, not only as we live, but as people want to talk to us about what it is we believe, what type of God it is that we serve, that we're able to accurately, faithfully talk and explain and help us from maybe saying things in a way that would lead to not great understandings for other people. Jesus says, and I can't tell you how many times this goes over and around in my head. Jesus says, if I am lifted up, I will draw all people unto me. And I just wonder if sometimes it's not really Jesus that we're lifting up. Because if we were, maybe we would see more people being drawn. So, as we think about the cross, continuing to think about the cross today, last week I said that I think I talked about how we really need to hold on to the strangeness of it, the oddness of it, because it really is very strange. It's very shocking. We become desensitized to it because we see it in front of us all the time. And we see it as a bear cross. Not crosses for bears, but a cross that is bare. And that, in some ways, when you see something every day, it just becomes the norm. And it's kind of like songs that we sing. We sing the songs, but if we've sung them over and over and over again, sometimes we just sing them and we don't really even think about the words. For instance, Rockabye Baby is a horrible, horrible song. Why would you ever sing this to a child? And yet we do. And it's because we just sing it and we don't actually stop and think about, we're talking about a poor child that's fallen out of a tree, probably to its death, and we're singing this to an infant. Is that a good idea? I don't think so. But it's what we do. And a lot of times when we recite things in church, if they just become normal to us, and maybe we don't actually stop and think about what we're saying or think about what we're singing because it just has become rote. We just do it. And so we need to make sure that we're seeing the life, the birth, the life, the death, the resurrection of Jesus afresh as often as we possibly can. And going back and thinking through critically what it is we believe about these things, about what they mean, about what they are. So, it is odd, number one. It goes counter to the way the rest of the world would think. The cross is really a scandal in so many ways. So, let me get I got a new pen, so I got a new pen, I'm very happy. Alright. No. No. So, one of the things I want to talk about today we're probably going to touch on all of these things today that y'all listed. So, when we think about the cross, you will hear it talked about in certain ways. You will hear that Jesus died for us, or in our place. Okay. So, I think it would be good for us to talk about the difference between those two things. They're almost used synonymously as though they are the same thing, but they're really not. Okay? So let me focus on the one on the bottom, in our place. When you hear that, when you hear Jesus died in our place, how would you explain that to somebody? If they said, so I heard somebody say Jesus died in our place. What do you mean?
They washed away original sin.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
He bore the, and I'm not sure the word to use, what we deserve. He took our punishment.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know exactly what.
We're not going to get to these three things today, so it'll be okay if I give a little space here. All right. Say that again. Took what we deserve.
Yeah.
Or our punishment.
Okay.
Took the punishment we deserve.
Yeah. Took our punishment. Okay. Anybody else? What do we mean when we say Jesus died in our place?
Well, he gave us the eternal life. He gave his life for us to have eternal life.
Okay. Okay.
Terry,
Yes.
isn't that penal substitution?
At least to a certain degree, yes, it is. So what we're describing right now, probably other than this one, is something called penal substitutionary atonement. So when we talk about how the cross works, the mechanism through which it does what it does for us. That is called, we call it atonement, which I think I said last week, is actually 3 words all crammed together at one to bring us back to right relationship with God is really what that's trying to say. So how do we become back? How does the cross accomplish our being restored to right relationship with God? And there are many theories about how the cross accomplishes that atonement. And one of them, it is the prevalent one today. It has been the prevalent one probably since about the 8th or 9th century. Prior to that, it really wasn't even one at all. Things changed dramatically in the church's understanding, or at least in the Western church's understanding of God and of Jesus and of what the cross is about, with the theologian Augustine, who lived in the 4th century. And Augustine was very, very influential. He was very, very powerful. He had a lot of powerful friends. And Augustine was able, through his connections and through his powerful friends, to push certain ways of thinking, and in fact, make other ways of thinking to end up being determined to be heresy. It was a very great change in the way we thought. Personally, I think Augustine took us in a very bad direction. He is the one that ends up giving us this idea of penal substitutionary atonement theory. Penal substitutionary atonement theory comes out of this understanding that when you are born guilty. You are born deserving punishment. Now, where this really starts coming out is in atonement theories that have to do, the first one that led to this one was something called the satisfaction theory. It was a man named Anselm. And Anselm said, you have to understand that we tend to think within the context within which we live. So if you live in a time period where there are lords and there are vassals, and that lords, when they are dishonored, surely you've seen in movies like The Scarlet Pimpernel, when someone comes up and smacks another person in the face and says, "I must have satisfaction, man. I will meet you at 12 o'clock noon. We will cross swords at that time, and one of us will not walk away because I demand satisfaction, because I've been dishonored." So this is the kind of context with which Anselm was living. And so he saw God as a Lord who could be dishonored, and therefore would demand satisfaction. And the cross, in Anselm's understanding, was the satisfaction that God required to forgive. Now, hopefully you can see that when Jesus gives us our primary picture, our primary understanding of who God is, to be a good and loving Father, that when you put onto God something that doesn't line up with that, it's going to cause problems. When you dishonor a good and loving Father, satisfaction is not what they demand. If your child, your grandchild, says something disrespectful to you,
Never will.
Never will.
Well,
They do no wrong in my eyes.
They can do no wrong in your eyes. There you go. There you go. But do you understand that is the disposition of God? The disposition of God, of a good Father, is not you're not doing what I've told you to do. I need satisfaction. Get in your room so I can get my satisfaction. That's not what a good father does.
The prodigal son.
Yes. The prodigal son could not have dishonored his son more. His father more. Basically said, I wish you'd just go ahead and die so I can get my money. Don't want to be a part of this family anymore. In fact, I'm going to go live with the enemy. I'm going to go live with the heathens. I'm going to put myself as far away relationally and religiously as I can from this family. I'm going to dishonor everything that you've raised me to learn and to be. And he gets back, and the father says, I need my satisfaction. No, it's not what he does. He throws a party. So can you see how our context of where and when we live shapes our way of understanding about God? Yep.
I mean, what you're saying, it seems really logical, it makes a lot of sense. Then why didn't anybody say, wow, that makes more sense, what you're saying than,
Well,
I mean, all Christian churches I've been to talk about the gap and the cross bridges the gap, and,
yep.
and it's like, I don't know, it's way different than just talking about God this way.
Well, can I tell you it's because of our context? So we turn everything into transaction because we live in a transactional context, a transactional time period, a transactional culture, where if you want something from me, you got to do something for me first. And because that's the way we understand the light, yes?
What has that got to do with birth cause, everything you're talking about now? I don't understand what that has to do with birth cause,
Okay.
which is in
If
a few days.
If what happens on the cross we need to understand through what we understand about why Jesus came in the first place.
He came to be on the cross. That was his purpose.
That was not his only purpose. In fact, I would say it's a part of the whole.
He came to heal.
Yes, yes. And that's the thing. But if we just say, which I've seen unfortunately a lot recently, is that Jesus, the only reason Jesus really came was to be crucified. You will see a picture of Jesus in a manger and a shadow coming in through the window that lays a shadow of a cross over Jesus. And if we're talking about the idea that Jesus just came to die for us because that's what was required by God to forgive us, as opposed to understanding, because see, that is a particular understanding of the cross. When we think about the cross as some sort of transaction, that God demands his blood to pay God off, that's a transaction. God's love, God's forgiveness is pure grace. That means doesn't require payment, doesn't require anything for God to do it. God is not given something first and then he responds by something else. God is the first mover in everything. God is the one who does first and we respond. You were wanting to say something.
I just saw this really neat little picture, and it was basically about the prodigal son, and it said, I don't care what you have done, just come home.
Yeah. So, in our place leads us to think that the cross is what we deserve. And Jesus took our place individually and collectively on the cross. Okay? I don't see me writing down on those kids. Took our punishment. So, back to a big pet peeve of mine. If you guys haven't learned it, I will tell you again. The word deserve is a word that we all the time seem to be using it incorrectly. Okay? If I said, let me pick on somebody else. If I said, Richard, if I said about Richard, you don't deserve the love of God, I hope someone would come up to me and say, Terry, that's not correct. Terry, if you mean that Richard hasn't earned the love of God, if that's what you're trying to say, absolutely. That's correct. Because whether it's the love of God or the love of somebody else, you cannot earn love. If you have to do something to earn it, then it's not love. Does that make sense?
I worked 40 hours
Yes.
this week
Yes.
at my job.
Yes.
I deserve my paycheck.
You earned your paycheck. Now, did you see deserving? You earned your paycheck.
Yeah.
You don't deserve your paycheck. You earned it,
Yeah.
right? Now, if you got paid for just being awesome, for just being you, for just existing, Barb's like, okay, why weren't you talking about me this way? Barb's like, no, we're fine with that. If we're being paid for just being me, then I deserve it. Because it's about who I am, what I am intrinsically, not what I've done, not what I've earned. So, does your grandchild deserve your love? Yes. 1,000 times yes. Do our children all the time, or actually at any time, do our children earn our love? No. Because that's an oxymoron. That is antithetical to the concept of love. You cannot earn love. But you deserve it. See, we're not struggling with what we deserve. The cross is not about what we deserve. The cross is about what we've earned. Yes.
What about when your wife's really mad at you, so when you do things to like help earn your love back?
Yeah.
He's familiar.
Why are you looking over there? He's talking.
Yeah. So
That is not true.
could it be what you're trying to do to try to get your other person to see you as being deserving?
Yes.
Again. The doing the stuff can't earn. We can't do things. It may help remind you of his deservingness, but it cannot earn love. Guys, we've got to hold on to the difference between those two things. You, every one of you, and the southern y'all,
All y'all.
all of you, corporately, as a group, and individually, deserve the love of God. Because you were born, you were created to be loved by God. That is your design. That is what you're created for. You cannot deserve less than what you're created for. Yes?
Can you talk about persecution by any chance up there?
We will get to that. We will get to that. Yes.
Such as people being killed in Nigeria for their lovely faith.
Yes.
Being beheaded and killed. And Hamas is still killing them in Gaza, the ones that disagree with them. And right in Israel, they were on Israel's side, they're killing them too.
We've had a lot of killing that has been happening because of disagreements about either ethnicity or about religion. And it's not just on one side, it's all around. It's what we typically tend to do as human beings when people don't agree with us and we don't like it. And it's not just with swords, it's not just with guns, it's with our words.
The fighting
as well.
is over in Gaza with the battles on road.
No, I agree. So, if we look at the cross and we think about in our place, that usually leads us in a bad direction. Okay? If differently, instead of in our place, if we say for us, for your children, something's happening in their lives, and you see that what is needed is for you to sacrifice, to do for your child. And through that sacrifice to help in whatever way is going on in their lives. It could be that, I don't know, something's going on. They need something new. They need stuff for school. And you say, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice, we're going to give up this so that our kids can have this. You are sacrificing for your children. You are doing what needs to be done to be able to give them life in a way they don't have it right now. So when we think about the cross, we think about what is it that human beings need to get us back into right relationship with God, because that's what we need. Punishment, again, another big pet peeve of mine, punishment is not the same thing as discipline. Punishment is about vengeance. Punishment is, I'm going to get you back for what you've done. Punishment is, I'm going to teach you, and it's going to hurt. You'll never do this again because you're going to fear what I'm going to do, the retribution I will bring. Punishment is about me. Discipline, on the other hand, is about the other. Discipline is saying, I love you too much to allow you to continue to hurt yourself and hurt other people. And so I'm going to try to do X, Y, Z to help get you back in the right path. To get you out of the path of danger. It's not about me, because in fact, part of what I'm willing to do is for me to sacrifice. I don't want to make you pay for what you've done. I want to save you from continuing to have to pay. When someone is going down the road of drugs and they're hurting themselves and they're hurting other people around them with that addiction, what do they need? Do they need to be punished? Is that what they need? No. What they need is to be healed. What they need is to be healed from that addiction. What they need is to know they're not in it by themselves. They're not isolated. That's what happens. Sin tends to isolate us. We feel like we're the only ones going through it. We feel like we're trapped in it. We're by ourselves. What do we people need? They need to know they're not alone. There is someone else that gives a rip about them, that loves them, that's saying, I'm not looking at you as a drug addict. I am looking at you as the person I love who is suffering with this addiction that I need to be willing to sacrifice my life to live into your life to help you because I love you. Discipline, by definition, is because I love someone. And I want them to be healed, and I want them to be made whole. Punishment.
They have to accept it too. They have to accept their.
Not for me to do what I'm doing.
Maybe not for you.
No, but that's the point.
For themselves.
Yes, but the moment we say.
Realize that they're on drugs.
But the moment we say they have to accept it or they have to realize it, and that puts any kind of barrier between me doing what I should be doing, then I'm doing wrong. I cannot place between me and somebody else a requirement of transaction. Okay, if you'll just admit it, then I'll love you and I'll live into your life. If you'll just do this, then I will do this. No. We cannot place that barrier in between this and that. We have to pour our lives out first, like God does. Yes?
There was a fellow on the airline yesterday. He was going to Alaska.
Okay.
And he had taken some mushrooms, but they were the drug mushrooms. And he was trying to stop the flight. He was trying to put all the emergency things to stop the flight in flight. And they took him away, and he didn't realize what he was doing until they arrested him, and then he realized what he was doing was real. He was on some sort of mushrooms that are drugs.
Yes.
But why did he realize that? He finally came to himself.
Right. And that's what we hope. We hope people will open their eyes and come to themselves. But we cannot place a requirement on someone else for us to be willing to love them. Yes. Yes. I have two hands.
What was the purpose then? Who was the brutality of the crucifixion for then? Why did they have to do that? This guy, because it makes it seem like God was like this bloodthirsty person. Said, okay, you did enough, cool. You know.
Yes.
I mean,
So here's the question: where did the punishment come from?
yeah, but he knew that was going to happen, so he put
Sure.
himself in there.
Sure. And just like when you step in front of a car that's about to hit somebody, you know punishment, you know this destruction's coming. You know it's going to hit you. You're not doing it because you believe God has sent the car to hit the person. But we assume within the atonement theologies that we have been given that somehow this punishment that Jesus took was God's doing. That God was punishing Jesus. That is not what Scripture bears out.
No.
Scripture says that humanity and our violence was directed at Jesus. He bore our violence. He bore our theological violence. Because see what we do, and we continue to do it today, is we do this thing called scapegoating. And it's been used down throughout the ages, where we have bad things that are happening in our community. Negative things are happening. And what do? We find one person, or we find one group of people, and we say, they're the problem. They're the ones that are making all this happen. They're the ones that have brought us bad luck. If we just get rid of them, then everything will be okay. And it's happened throughout the ages don't have to look too far back. I'll go back a little further than what I could go. We could just go back to the 20s and 30s. It's those Jews. They're the ones who are making our German country bad. They're the ones that are come in and infiltrating. They're the ones who, what was the word Hitler used? They are corrupting the bloodline, contaminating the blood of our country. They were the scapegoat. And that's what humans do.
They've been scapegoats for ages.
Yes.
And where does the term scapegoat come from?
Yes. And so Jesus became the scapegoat. The Pharisees said he's the problem. If we just get rid of him. And so Jesus bears our religious and political violence. He bears what we do to the poor and the marginalized when we make them our scapegoat. And he suffers by our hands. He takes on the punishment that we do to others, that we do to ourselves. He bears it. This isn't the punishment of God.
Does God punish anybody?
No.
What about when the Red Sea was parted and all the Egyptians were killed? That was God. That wasn't a person that did that.
So, here's the thing. I can go back into the Old Testament and I can give you tons of different examples of where the writer believes that God is acting in a way that does not look like Jesus. I believe, and I can document and I can argue. I believe to where you can always question. You can always say, "But what about?" But I believe the New Testament says, and I believe John says, as we went through John, if it does not line up with Jesus, then it's wrong about God. And it doesn't matter where it is. Unless you can say, Jesus would do this.
What do you mean it's wrong? It either happened or it didn't happen.
So here's a good example. In the book of Nahum, and the book of Jonah, they are both the same story. They're told 200 years apart, but they're about the same thing that happens. Nahum tells the story of Assyria and Nineveh, and God destroys them in that story. The writer places Nineveh's destruction to be God's doing. 200 years later, or 3, another writer says, nope, that's not how I understand God. Not a bit. In fact, if I was going to tell you the story, and it would be consistent with who I believe God to be, God would not want to destroy them. He would send somebody. And that person probably wouldn't want to go. And that was Jonah. And he would send them, and there would be a grand adventure, and they would go, and Jonah would preach the worst sermon possible. And God would be revealed even through that, and they would repent, and destruction would not happen. Same story. Exact same. 2 different people writing from a different understanding of God. Do we believe that God forces people to do something? Or do we have free will to live the way we want to live, to reject Him or not reject Him? Right. And yet, we have a story in the Old Testament that on its face basically says God forced Pharaoh into doing something. He hardened his heart to where he could not choose to obey. That is antithetical. That is not the way we believe about God. Did they believe that way back then? Yes, they did. Are the theologies of the Old Testament always in line with the theologies of the New Testament? Do they line up with who Jesus is? No. So what do we do? My answer doesn't have to be your answer, but my answer is that I believe that Jesus is what I hold on to. And if it doesn't match up with Jesus back here, I have to say these people were writing from their understanding, and that's okay. But to make me have to go back to this understanding, whether it's about God or whether it's about science. Guys, do you realize in the Old Testament they were writing from a concept that the sky was solid and it was resting on 4 pillars at the 4 corners of a flat earth? That was their scientific understanding. I don't have to believe that.
People still believe that.
People still believe that. One of my favorite things, I'll finish with this, one of my favorite, you see the people that hold up the posters at basketball games or football games,
316.
and it's usually something fun. You could be John 3:16. My favorite one ever, because I'm a big Tar Heels fan, basketball. And for those of you that know anything about UNC, Tar Heels, their arch nemesis, the group they hate, the group everybody should hate, just honestly, is Duke. All right, the Duke Blue Devils. There's a reason they're devils in their name. I'm just telling you, there's a reason.
Very often.
And
It's just not be.
so several years back, Duke had a great player who came out after 1 year and went to the NBA. His name was Kyrie Irving. And Kyrie, after he got to, where was he? I think he was in Cleveland first. Kyrie came out saying that he believed in a flat earth. So the very next game between the Tar Heels and Duke, a Carolina fan held up a sign, and it said, apparently it takes Duke University more than 1 year to teach their students the world is not flat. So, all of that to say, the incarnation, the life, the death, the resurrection of Jesus reveals to us in a way never possible before what the character of God truly is. And it is a character that is completely love. And everything God does and everything God says is about love. And if you don't think it is, that is where you are going to go wrong. That is why it's not about punishment, it's about discipline. Because it's always about what is good for the other, for the beloved. And the problem is the writers of the Old Testament often did not think that God loved their enemies. And they wrote from that perspective. And so when you see the writers of the Old Testament hold themselves up as the only ones that are loved, and the other people over there who are our enemies, and God is against them. Not just against what they're doing, but against them, because they're not us. And therefore, we want them destroyed. Therefore, our God must want them destroyed too. That does not line up with the God revealed in Jesus, and the God revealed specifically through the death and resurrection of Jesus. And the incarnation, the willingness of God to lay down his divine advantages, to lay down the comfort of heaven, and to be willing to take on our life, to live out all of the difficulties, to live out sickness, to live out the loss of a parent, to live out the loss of other people, and to go through the thing that we fear the most, and that is to die and in our understanding to die the most painful death. Did you know that the word excruciating comes from the word crucifixion? That is love. To say, I'm willing to go through all of that. Barbara, I am willing to go through all of that to reveal to you, to open your eyes, to see me as I truly am, to understand through all of that, that I love you that much, so you'll come to trust me. You'll come to know that my forgiveness isn't based on you paying me something. To understand that my love doesn't have a price ticket on it. I've done all of this first, without you doing anything. I've saved you before you even understood anything. Now that you see it, now that you've experienced, now that you know what kind of God I am, because the cross is what's been in my heart the entire time. That type of sacrifice, that type of love has always been who I am. And now you've seen it, and now it has changed history. Can you just see it for the grace, for the love, for the forgiveness that it is, and quit trying to make it into somehow you have to earn it? Because all that does is make me just a transactional monster that no one would want to trust. Because if I demand something from you before I'm willing to do something. In fact, if I demand blood, how am I better than anybody else? The cross should change our understanding about God from a God back here who loves certain people and hates others, for a God who just simply fixes things by destroying and by violence. And God comes and says, no, who I really am is someone who will let you do your worst to me, and I still forgive. Who you will make me out to be someone I'm not, I still love you. I will work through your wrong ideas of me. I gotta say this. When Jesus went on the cross, Jesus took on the mask of being a horribly evil person. Because that's the people who were crucified. To the world, when someone saw Jesus up on the cross, to the Romans, for them, that's an evil person. That's a person who deserves to be crucified. And Jesus said, you know what? I'll let you put that mask on me. I'll let you put a face on me, a character on me that doesn't fit, that isn't true. But I will be vindicated. I will have the truth about me come out through what you're doing to me. Could it be that the same thing happens when people write about Jesus, even in the Old Testament, or write about God, but they write about him in a way that puts a different face on him, puts a wrong character on him. And God says, you know what? That's okay. I'll still breathe life into those words. And one day, through my Son, you'll see who I truly am. And he tells the New Testament writers, hold on to that understanding. See the rest of it through that lens. Because it's only as we demonstrate the character of God we see in Jesus that people will come to trust God. All right. Father, thank you for Jesus. We so desperately need him. It can be so confusing without him. But we know if we just hold on to him, if we just understand you through him, then we're on solid ground. Help us not to take our eyes off of Him no matter what. As we go into service, as we listen, as we sing, help us not to just sing the words and not think about what we're singing. Help us to think through what we're hearing that is coming out of the Scriptures. Help us to truly contemplate what it means as we come forward and we ingest your identity in the cup and in the bread. And let it change us. Let it transform us by the renewing of our thinking. And for all of this, we praise you. In Jesus' name.
Jonah?
Oh, guys, quickly. Since the food pantry has come back into being, I want to make sure that we go back. You can click it now.